Ողջույն, Բուն TV-ի եթերում Դիլեմա հաղորդաշարն է եւ ես Արեգ Քոչինյանն եմ։ Այսօրվա իմ հյուրն է Միջազգային հարաբերությունների Լեհական ինստիտուտի Հարավային Կովկասի հարցերով գլխավոր փորձագետ Վոյզեխ Վոյտասևիչը։ Այսօրվա հարցազրույցը մենք վարելու ենք անգլերեն լեզվով եւ հայերեն ենթագրերով։ Ներողություն ենք խնդրում լեզվի դժվարության համար, բայց ամեն անգամ չէ, որ Հայաստանում լինում է արտասահմանցի փորձագետ ու մենք հնարավորություն կունենանք խոսելու նմանատիպ հետաքրքիր թեմաներով։ Dear Wojtek, thank you for accepting our invitation to be the guest today. I think there is a lot we could discuss and there is a lot that the Armenian audience would be interested in. And the very first question that I would like to raise, could you please elaborate a little bit for us, where does the foreign policy priorities of Poland stand as of now?
Thank you very much for the invitation. So Poland, as the other European countries, especially from the eastern part of our continent, is in a very difficult situation since 2022. I mean the full-scale Russian invasion on Ukraine. Of course, I mean the security situation, international environment around Poland and our part of Europe has changed completely. So now all of our efforts are put on deterrence Russia. We are fully aware that in case of failure of Ukraine in the confrontation with the Russian Federation, Poland, Baltic states, but also like countries like Romania, Bulgaria, could be the next victim of the Russian imperialism and the Russian violent position. So at the very beginning of that conflict in 2022, we opened our borders for the Ukrainian refugees. We massively helped them to survive that really difficult period of time. We invested a lot of money, not only in those social projects, I mean accommodation with social benefits for Ukrainian refugees, but also with the military aid to Ukraine. We created also the military hub in the southern part of Poland, not far away from the city Rzeszów.
Poland is one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine in its fight for freedom.
That's true. But of course, we need to be prepared for the next steps. That's why previous and the current Polish government decided to invest a lot of money of security spendings. Nowadays, 5% of Polish GDP is invested in military spending, so it's the highest score among the NATO members, and this is also the Polish answer for the US President Donald Trump expectations towards NATO members. And of course, we also trying to convince our friends in the different European capitals to follow us in this on that path.
Wojtek, two questions raised from what I've heard. First, could you please elaborate about if there are concerns on the future of NATO? I mean, this U.S. position, this instability among the NATO alliance. How do you see it in Warsaw, and how do you foresee the future of the alliance in Poland? That's first question. And second, recently amongst the other European states, we have seen rise of nationalism. We have seen rise of extreme right wings, and to some level Euroscepticism. What's the situation in Warsaw and in Poland generally on this issue?
Membership to NATO was a dream of a generation of our parents. They have never expected that Poland one day could join that alliance. So in the 80s or 70s, it was like a huge dream, but it happened. And of course, I mean, being a NATO member is a huge guarantee of our independence, sovereignty, and safety. As you mentioned, I mean, the last years there are some, new tendencies within the NATO. But we should, in my opinion, we shouldn't perceive, I mean, the current U.S. administration as a risk our security, but maybe rather as a challenge. And as I mentioned already, we should invest more money, more GDP to the security spendings, and trying to convince the other partners. And we need to take more responsibility on our security in Europe, and not to look at the US all the time. I mean, the situation has changed. It's not the Cold War times. It's not even in the 90s or the beginning of the 21st centuries. We should also understand that America has its own interests, not only in Europe, but also in the other parts of our world. I mean, the biggest challenge for them is China, and we should also understand that new circumstances. So we shouldn't be upset that I mean the new president is not so engaged in the European, that he doesn't perceive the Russian invasion of Ukraine as the top priority for his administration, but to invest more money in our security. So that's why also in the last months, European leaders are trying to elaborate a new policy. In case of Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk signed with the President Emmanuel Macron, French President, a new treaty, and he would like to the Poland to be the part of that nuclear umbrella of France. So I think such kind of way of thinking, such kind of steps are needed to find ourselves in the new circumstances. Regarding the far rights parties and supporting for them, of course, it's dangerous and it's challenging for the European integration process, but we should also understand what are the reasons that those kind of parties are able to gain more and more supports. In some spaces, in some cases, and unfortunately the activity, the position of the European Union was not really successful. So it always brings some space for trying to take care of that kind of electorate in every European countries, which is more cautious regarding some, security issues. And also, I think the really important factor is the Russian disinformation. I mean, they are trying to distribute those anti-European narrative, trying to portray European Union not as a guarantee of our prosperity, of our security, but like rather like promoting anti-conservative values and stuff like this. So the old political class in every European countries needs to find a new way of communication with the nations, and to deliver their promises. And I think in that way it will be possible to decrease the support for such kind of for such kind of political parties. And now we have a new government in Germany, for example. So it's once again a huge coalition of CDU and SPD parties. So I think it's a huge task for them to deliver all the promises. If not, in case of such a situation, AfD party could get even more public support. But also we Europeans, democratic, we should always present to the public, I mean, that Russian factor, that Russian disinformation, to show that they finance some political parties, like in France is like Le Pen party. I'm talking about that credit of the Russian bank to her party. So of course those.
And we have seen a lot also in Romania. I mean.
Yes, also I mean like the last presidential elections. So I in my opinion, those Russian narrative is used not only in the European countries but also in that post-Soviet space. Now we can observe the tendencies in neighboring Georgia, for example. So that situation is quite challenging for Europe, for European Union. But when we are analyzing the history of European Union, we see that we are going from one crisis, let's say crisis, to another one. But hopefully and successfully, we are able to manage to solve some kind of solutions, even in very difficult circumstances.
As it says, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And in this context, I really like how it was described by the Polish Prime Minister once, that he described the situation that 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to protect them from 170 million Russians. And that was the situation when the war just began, and that was the situation when the conflict just began. But since then, I think Poland was a shining example of how a situation can change, how the European countries themselves can do significantly more in their defense and in their own protection. And that's pretty much what the Americans were looking for. So I completely agree with you that you can understand the new administration in the US and their concerns.
That's true, but still we should remember that without NATO, without US, the other European countries like Poland or the Baltic states are not able to defend themselves by themselves. So.
I agree. Now let's try to concentrate a little bit more on if we can call it a region. I would like to start from this concept of Eastern Partnership. When it was just created, more or less it made some sense, basically to include every single post-Soviet country other than from the members of the European Union in a single basket, and then try to implement policy towards them. But now we have completely different countries with completely different choices of their both foreign policy and of their development strategy. We have Belarus, which have chosen basically this union state with Russia. We have Ukraine, which is fighting for its independence with Russia. We have Moldova and Georgia, which, in case of Georgia, now there are some doubts on this, which have chose the European track of development. We have Armenia, which is, while being the member of the Eurasian Union, adopted a law targeting a goal to become a member of the European Union. And we have Azerbaijan, which probably can be best described as member of the non-alignment movement, as a member that doesn't want any allegiances with any center of force, let's say. So completely different powers. Would you agree with me that this whole concept of Eastern Partnership and of European centralized policy towards Eastern Partnership is already outdated?
So before coming to the judgment of the current, let's say, situation connecting, according to the European Eastern Partnership, let me remind you that that program, that initiative created by Poland and Sweden was quite successful.
I agree.
Because, Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova signed an association agreement, free trade agreement, visa liberalization agreement, and finally they received the candidate status. But I fully agree with you that the situation has changed completely, and now that program, that initiative needs kind of changes, and it's not a secret. I can tell you openly that Polish MFA and also some other European MFA have been started, elaborating updated version of that program. From one point of view, one can say that the aims of that program was fulfilled, so let's stop it. But from the other point of view, it has the visible and very well known mark. So I prefer the second options, but it's better to change it and try to position, that initiative in the new circumstances, that rather than cancel it. So of course, I hope that in upcoming months, the European leaders and also some officials from Brussels will be able to present a new version of the Eastern Partnership, which could also be helpful and useful for such countries like Armenia, which has decided to change its foreign policy and now integrate somehow with the Western, with the European Union, and with the US. So yeah, let's wait just several months more, and let's see what will be the final outcome of those discussions and of those elaborations.
Yes. Going further in concentrating on a smaller region, let's say on South Caucasus. During the last couple of years, a lot has changed in South Caucasus. Georgia was replaced with the role of the leader of the democratic changes, of freedom, etc., by Armenia. And the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict has transformed significantly. Now we are closer than ever to signing the peace agreement. We're closer than ever to the peace deal, which on its own turn would create dramatic changes, not just for the level of South Caucasus, but in a larger scale on the communication, etc., etc. How is all of this seen in Poland? And do you share these opinions that I've just raised? That the democratic changes and being close to peace.
Yeah, that's true. That the situation, political situation in your region, in South Caucasus, has changed in the last several years, and we are observing the situation, internal situation in Georgia, and it creates a lot of concerns within the European Union, also in Poland. Poland has decided to impose some sanctions on the Georgian Dream's government because of that crackdown on protests last autumn and during the winter. Still, the Warsaw, but also Brussels, are sending messages to the Georgian authorities, to the Georgian government, to come back to the democratic and European path. So they're like both way. Trying to convince them to change its position, but also there's on the table. There's still discussions on the new sanctions regarding the candidate status, suspending the visa-free regime and stuff like this. And of course, in Warsaw, in Brussels, we also noticed the new situation in your country, in Armenia. We are really happy to see that another post-Soviet countries is interested in deepening relations with the European Union, with the integration with the European Union. All of us, we are aware that the process will take a lot of times, and it wouldn't be the easy one.
Yes.
Let me remind you that in case of Poland, it was almost 15 years when we were able to integrate with the European Union. A lot of reforms were conducted, a lot of efforts, also financial ones. So of course, in Warsaw, in Brussels, we're observing all those tendencies, all of those processes, and we're also waiting for the final signing, final steps of the peace negotiation, peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and we have a huge. We hope that it brings some benefits regarding international transport and trade, and all those connections through Armenia. Between Azerbaijan and Turkey, and also with the Central Asian countries, China. it will increase the potential of the middle corridor. So I'm pretty sure that there's a huge support from the side of the European Union regarding those processes. Of course, let me remind you of the engagement of Charles Michel. He was one of those international politicians who were engaged in that kind of facilitator between Baku and Yerevan. So we really hope that this year the final agreement between your countries will be signed.
Yes, different European countries have different perspective about the conversation or the idea of EU enlargement. What's the traditional position of Poland on the enlargement issues?
Of course, we have been observing for many years within the European Union something which is called the EU enlargement fatigue. So in the old countries, old members of the European Union, there are some, skepticism regarding that enlargement process, and for them, enlargement in 2004 and 2007, which consisted of that Central and Eastern European countries, it was too much. But of course, Poland, Baltic states, generally the new part of the European Union, we have been always for inviting more and more countries to our European family. And of course, Ukraine, Moldova, but also South Caucasus countries like Armenia and Georgia are always welcome to join the European family. But as I already said, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of efforts. It also needs a lot of financial support, because all of those reforms are costly. And the European Union, it was absolutely the same case in our case in Poland. Candidate countries needed financial support, because by themselves they are not able to conduct all of those reforms, because at the very beginning it has some negative consequences for the society. For example, when we are talking about the agriculture, you need to invest a lot of money to transform agriculture sector to meet the conditions created by the European Commissions. You need money to invest in that sector. So at the very beginning, it's always kind of opposite from that from the farmers, for example. But for like Poland, like the other countries, there are the successful stories. Being a member of the European Union is the biggest success in the modern Polish history. Our economy has changed completely. The level of life of the Polish society has been increased. So finger crossed for Armenia, for the other countries who are interested in integration with the European Union. But of course, you also need to lobby among European capitals, try to convince them. But the biggest asset in your case, in the case of the other countries, will be your determination in conducting the reforms. So you need to be aim-oriented in that task.
And we have to be able to show results.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
Let us talk a little bit more about the bilateral relations. Could you elaborate a little bit where do the Armenian-Polish relations stand as of now, and what significant achievements we've had so far?
So last year, Polish President Andrzej Duda visited Armenia. He discussed the possible spheres of relations between our countries. He visited also the neighboring area between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Talked with the
EMA.
mission. And also 2 years ago, Poland bought, if I'm not wrong, 60% of the Armenian stock exchange. We also tried to support you during the crisis in 2023, when the 100 Armenians came to Armenia.
100,000, yes.
Yes, so we sent some humanitarian aid. We participated also financially in supporting you. Of course, there are still a huge possibilities between our countries, and but I think we should framework those possibilities in the wider dimensions. I'm talking about the generally increasing trade exchange between Armenia and the European Union. Let me just remind you the case of Georgia. They invested massively in exporting their agricultural products, especially wines, mineral waters. Now you are able to find bottles of Georgian wines on the shelf in every regular supermarket in Poland. So I think in case of Armenia, like cognac, it could be even more and more popular in Poland, in the other European countries. But
where our wines are also good.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I was able to taste some of them during my visit to Yerevan.
Great.
That's true. So I think it's a huge space to change. To increase our relations between Yerevan and Warsaw, and also the other European countries.
I would add that another sphere of possible effective cooperation could be the IT sphere, because Armenia is really big on its IT industry, and that's the fastest growing industry in Armenia. So theoretically, that can also be one of the sort of platforms where the cooperation could grow. But could you please elaborate a little bit on also EUMA? I'm sure that everyone knows that Poland is an active member of the EUMA. Would you share some numbers and some information about the participation level of the Poland?
The deputy head of that mission is Polish, and as far as I know, that the mission consists of almost 200 people, and 9 of them are from Poland. As I already mentioned, the deputy head of the mission is also
Polish.
The Polish. So I think it's a really important factor. That mission is a really important factor in securing the security of Armenia. It's like a visible evidence that mission works. Decreasing the number of the incidents of the Armenian-Azerbaijan border, and so as far as you will be interested in remaining the missions in Armenia, it should work. I also heard that the number of the observers are not enough.
Yes.
So as far as I know, the European side is still working on increasing and finding the appropriate persons who could be the members of that mission. But I think it's a visible sign also from the European side that European Union, also Poland, is really interested in what's going on in Armenia and the South Caucasus, that we are interested in that part of the world.
Wojtek, my last question would be probably a little bit hard for an expert. But
let's try.
But what are the sort of average conversation, or what would be the first things that would come to a mind of a Polish person when he would hear about Armenia? What do people speak about Armenia when they do speak about Armenia? What are the most known things about our country in your country?
But this is the country which is located far away from Poland, for sure. This is a Christian country. I think the Polish people are aware of it. Cognac, for sure.
Okay.
What's more? Cognac.
Is the Yerevan radio jokes also
yes,
present?
still,
Yeah?
sure. Yeah, it works still. Last week we organized a huge international conference, Peace Strategic Arc, and I met my friend from Krakow, from the university, and we discussed, I really don't remember about what, but he mentioned that Yerevan write the joke, so still it appears among the Polish people.
Okay. On this positive note, once again, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and giving the interview to Bun TV and to Դիլեմա podcast. Հարգելի հեռուստատողներ, շնորհակալ եմ մեզ հետևելու համար, կհանդիպենք ինչպես միշտ յուրաքանչյուր կիրակի 19:00